Hello and welcome to another video in my series on Microsoft exam MB-400. This is the developer's exam for those who are building solutions or extending out Dynamics 365 or the Power Platform. So I'm Joe, the CRM chap, and today we're going to be finishing off our sort of mini focus series in a series on plugins. We're going to be taking a look at how we can debug plugins using the plugin registration tool. So in the previous video, as you can see, if you've been following along so far, we took a look at the trace log. Now the trace log is very useful when it comes to debugging your plugins, but it can sometimes be limited in terms of the information it can give you. Sometimes, developers, when they're using Visual Studio, they much rather prefer to, use your debugging tools within there, play back a particular piece of code, and see precisely what it's performing via watch conditions and things like that. So the great thing is that with plugins, that we do have the ability to support that, and we're going to show you how you can do that in today's video. So first of all, we're going to assume that the tracing, we're just going to pretend for a moment that trace logging doesn't exist. So we're just going to remove all of the appropriate bits on here that are related to our trace log on here. And we're going to go back to the original situation we were in at the start of the trace video, where we've got this particular this issue going on here with our code, where whenever we try and write out to the first name field, it's just not working. So for example, if we were to jump back into the application on here, if I was to try and update this to Smith, for example, we can see if I save it, yep, that works. It does the uppercase S for me. If I try and do this on here, so try and do Alan Smith on there, try and save it, again, it's not working. So we need to try and figure out in terms of exactly, what's going on here with our particular plugin. So with the bits removed on there, first things first, you just need to redeploy this plugin out, so we've got the latest version in the application. So we use the plugin registration tool again to do that. Select the assembly, make sure everything's been ticked out, and then we can then click the update selected plugins button down there. Okay, so with that done then, now we can then focus on doing the remote debugging. But to do that, first of all, we need to install a specific tool. It's called the Plugin Profiler. It's included as part of the plugin registration tool, and this will give us the ability to start doing our remote debugging of plugins. So all we do first of all is we click Install Profiler up here. It does take a few minutes just to install, so we probably jump ahead at this point. Okay, so with that installed, we can just click OK on there. And now if we were to navigate out into the settings page of the application, we can see that we should have a brand new area in the sitemap, which we'll come back to in a few minutes, but I'll just show you it now quickly, so you can see plugin profiles over there. So with that installed, now we can actually configure our plugin to basically write out the information into the profiler that we need to start performing our remote debugging. And we do that by first of all just right-clicking on our plugin step, clicking on Start Profiling. Now you've got two options on here. You can have it so that it throws out the profiler as an exception. So when you're performing the specific action in the application, you'll get a prompt box on there with the profile in there, and then from there you can take that and move further ahead with it. The alternative option, the less intrusive option from a user standpoint, is to instead store it into an entity that it creates on there. So we're just going to accept that as a default, click OK, and at that point now that's been profiled. So we can now go back into the application, we can attempt this again, so we'll just do a slightly different name on here, so we'll click Save again on there. So it takes a little bit longer that time to complete it. We can see it's still not working as we want it to, so it has run through the plugin completely. But if we now go back into the plugin profiles over here, we can see that we've got a brand new record over here. If we click into that, similar to the trace log, we'll get some high-level information in terms of the plugin, when it executed, entity name, secure configuration, all that good stuff. But the bit that we're most interested in is our serialized profile down here. So we can see we get a whole bunch of lovely-looking text down here, and this is the bit that we're most interested in. So at this point, I'm just going to grab a copy of that. I'm going to create a new notepad file over here, and I'm just going to basically save and copy that into there. And for now, I'm just going to pop it into the project folder that we've been working with at the moment. So if I go down here, so I'll just pop it into there. I'll just call this our profile. Okay, so that's saved down now. So now we can return back into the plugin registration tool, and we can now try and debug the plugin. And there's a few things that we need to basically get set up and hooked up here each time that we sort of do this. So first of all, we need to give it our profile. So what we set up already. So if we just navigate up a few folders on here, we can see, yep, there's our profile down there. We need to give it the name of the assembly that's currently deployed out into the application. So again, we just navigate down into here, get into our bin debug folder, and we can see there's our DLL. Now if I click start execution at this point, it's just you'll see some stuff appear out on there, but then nothing's happened. We actually now need to attach our Visual Studio with our currently open project to the plugin registration tool. Then that's going to let us do our playback through there. So in order to do this, we just click on debug at the top up here, go to attach to process. In the list down there, we find our plugin registration tool. So here it is down here. Click attach. And we can see that now we're essentially in debug mode in Visual Studio. So if we were to now click on here and start execution, it's now going to play it back through Visual Studio, but because we've got no sort of breakpoints defined, it's just going to run through and do absolutely nothing at this point. But we can see that something's happening in the background. Nothing's changed just yet. So I think it's actually probably run through that already. Yeah, it has. Okay. But because we've not done any breakpoints, we don't know what's going on. So in order to do our breakpoints, we just click on the appropriate areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on that there. That's the bit we're most interested in from a debugging standpoint. So now when I click start execution, it chucks me straight out into Visual Studio as soon as it hits that particular breakpoint. And here we can start to basically dive in and see a bit more detail about what's going on here. So for example, if I was debugging this, okay, so if we know there's a problem here with this field, okay, so maybe first thing I want to just double check is, okay, well, what have we got in terms of our contact field first of all as our contact object? So if I go to my watch conditions down there, I can type out contact, it maps out the entire object down there. I can inspect some of its various different properties down here. But if I was to do a check on here, based on what's fed on there, okay, so okay, have we got something on here? This will error. Okay, well, it doesn't actually exist, this field, it's not actually there. So that could be the root cause of our problem. You know, just to rule things out, maybe I could just check on here. Okay, I'm going to do a watch condition on this particular, you know, the value that it's trying to map out, just to see that it's basically correct or not. I missed out a bracket on there. And we can see, okay, well, that bit's fine because, yeah, we can see it's got our name there with our capital letter. So clearly there's a problem with this field on here. And as we know, the correct field name is our first name value. So if I was to type that in there, I can see, boom, okay, I'm getting a value back for there. So therefore, that's what we need to fix. We need to just change that back to first name and everything will be working just fine again. So when you finish debugging in here, you just click on stop up here anytime. It will then return you back into the plugin registration tool. Now you can go away, fix your particular issues that you've got with your plugin. When you're finished and you know everything's working again, two things just to make sure you always do. Make sure you stop profiling the step, so it's not writing out unnecessarily to the plugin, to the profiler each time. And you know, to always make sure that you uninstall the profiler as well. What I tend to find is that when you install it into a development environment, it can sometimes add on dependent components to some of the system entities that you might be working with. So therefore, when you finish, just give it a quick uninstall, and only then install it back in when you need it, when you need to do your debugging of your plugins. So that pretty much rounds it up then for plugins. So we've obviously covered quite a bit in terms of the 4 videos. We've seen how we can build a plugin out from scratch. We've seen how we can get it deployed out into the application, and then we've taken a look at the 2 ways in which you can debug plugins. So, you know, when it comes to the exam, when it comes to what you need to learn about, you know, having familiarity with the sort of the broad development process for plugins is going to be really essential. Understanding the execution pipeline, your messages as well, what you can do through the SDK, you know, all the various different operations. You know, be prepared for, you know, potentially situations where you need to, you need to sort of explain and demonstrate knowledge of those concepts in detail. So I hope that these 4 videos have been useful in helping to explain the concepts. And yeah, plugins are great. Just always make sure that you consider what else you've got from a functional standpoint in the Power Platform in Dynamics 365 before using them too readily. Okay, so there'll be more videos in this series, hopefully fairly shortly. So please like, subscribe to the channel if you're interested in seeing more videos or interested in seeing other content that I do. All it leaves me to say is to say thank you and have a great day ahead.